Good morning, everyone. Want to get things started. Want to welcome everyone to our May Local Chamber of Commerce Federation meeting. Have a lot in store for you today. We'll be joined a little later on by CFO Jimmy Patronis to give us a preview of hurricane season and an update of what's happening right now in the insurance market in Florida. I know that's a concern for each and every one of us. Every time we ask you guys, that's probably, if not number one, number two of the issues we've heard over the last year. So we've asked the CFO to brief us on what's going on, any updates, things for us, so we can be prepared when we hear from members and when we hear from staff as well, just to sort of, providing people with the best information possible. Mark Wilson, our President CEO, will lead things off shortly to bring us up to date what's happening in Florida. A lot of things that, we just finished our Prosperity Summit, talking about the things that we see important as we, continue moving through 2024. It's an election year, so things are going to be busy and noisy. So with that, I'm going to get things started and turn it over to Mark Wilson.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Andrew. I want to thank everybody for joining us as well. I know we have teammates all over Florida, local chamber partners, but also our Frank and Sheridan are in Broward today. We have a regional meeting there with our chairman of our board, and we have a few of our foundation teammates are over in Jacksonville today for an early learning effort, and of course, a couple of us are here in Tallahassee. So appreciate all of our partnerships. And as Andrew said, we have a lot to cover today. We're gonna get to hear from Christina at the Naples Chamber. Also, Sheridan will give an update here in a bit, and then of course our CFO. This is the agenda. It's typically what we follow every month, and we'll stick to this today. Christina will talk a little bit about item 5 there, and then we'll hear from CFO Patronis, and we'll go from there. We've got some brand new numbers to share with you today, both on polling and on what's going on in the economy. And so you're going to hear a lot of this before anybody else in Florida does. So do with it what you will that might advance your mission. So like I say, this is who we're going to hear from today. So I want to remind everybody right up front, the chat feature, the Q&A feature, those are really good ways to let us know what's on your mind. Also, if you want to ask a question or correct something that I said, feel free to do that. And that's a really good way to do it. Andrew mentioned, we have a statewide summit essentially every single month. And we were just in Broward County. We had our 2024 Florida Chamber Foundation Prosperity Summit. And of course, this is our effort to bring economic development and opportunity into zip codes where it hasn't been previously. And one of our speakers, we had almost 30 speakers. One of our speakers was our Speaker of the House, Paul Renner. And I want to thank Josh Wooten and the Citrus County Chamber for making the trip all the way to Broward. Chambers that are engaging in this level of zip code level economic development is huge. But for those of you who missed what Speaker Renner had to say, if you want to see it, just let Andrew know and he'll send you the video clip. But essentially, what he talked about was how long we've all been working together and the policies that the legislature and the governor put in place this past session, especially. I think we went over 12 bills that were passed this year that specifically help people get out of poverty and into the workplace. And I want to thank all of you for the roles that you've played in helping bring prosperity into zip codes where it otherwise wouldn't have been. Next year, we'll be in Daytona in Volusia County. It'll be in May. And again, we'll be wanting to showcase what local chambers are doing in this very important space of ending childhood poverty. So make sure we know what you're doing there. As we always do, I always love to ask you as you register what's on your mind. And just to take the temperature of everybody, top 4 issues on your minds are right here in front of you: homeowners insurance, workforce development, lawsuit abuse, and affordable workforce housing. We're clearly going to spend time today talking about the homeowners insurance situation. As we told you a couple of years ago, there were a lot of cost drivers that were driving this up, and I don't want to steal the CFO's thunder, but we're now seeing rate filings where insurance companies are actually asking to decrease their rates, hoping that the state will allow them to do that. So very predictable. We told everybody that would happen, and it's beginning to happen. I know it's not fast enough for anyone, but at least the aircraft carriers, starting to point in the right direction. And we also, just for fun, asked, who do you all think the next president's going to be? And if the election were today, you all, almost 2/3 of you think that Trump's going to be our next president. So stay tuned. We'll share some other polling. And then also, I think everyone knows I'm on our state's Economic Development Board, serving with our Secretary of Commerce, Alex Kelly. And so we will, based on your input, we'll try to have him next month. If not next month, we'll do it on the call after that. He will be with us in June, in Tampa, June 26th is our annual workforce summit called Learners to Earners. He'll actually be there the day before. He's joining our foundation board of directors on the 25th, and then he will be one of our key speakers on the 26th. I'll cover that more in just a minute. Remind everybody, big picture, everything we do is about how do we grow Florida to the 10th largest economy on the planet by 2030. We're currently 15. You can see the key numbers on the bottom. We're 23 million right now. We're going to add almost 3 million more by 2030. We need another 1.34 million new jobs. Sheridan's actually going to cover this later, so I won't go into detail on this slide. I just want to remind everybody this is our true north, and the 39 goals are, what we're pushing the legislature to do or not do, and we appreciate our partnership with all of you on that. One request is the Florida Department of Transportation is working on their long-term plan, their transportation plan, and the Florida Chamber, one of our executives, Katie Yater, some of you know, she's actually serving on that effort, and they have asked us to share with you a survey. It's super short. I think it's I took it the other day. It's 3 or 4 questions. And if you all are willing to share this with your members, or if you just want to take it yourself, we've been asked to help distribute this survey as part of Florida's long-range transportation needs and plans. So hopefully you'll help us get the word out on this, and we'll help Secretary Perdue there. Congrats to Heather and the Sarasota Chamber. If you didn't see the news, our friends at ACCE have named some finalists. We don't know who's going to win this, of course. We know Heather deserves it, but I think the Sarasota Chamber is the only chamber in Florida this year that made it this far, so I think she's one of the 3 finalists at ACCE. No surprise there at all, but congrats for even making it that far, and hopefully you'll make it even further. Just want to make sure everybody saw that. Also, as we're fond of saying around here, everything in Florida is changing, our politics, our demographics, our economics, and just want to show you how our voter registration continues to change in Florida. It's really amazing. But what you're looking at on the left side there is we now have over 900,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats in Florida. And remember, in October of 2021, there were more Democrats than Republicans. So this is just changing right before our eyes. On the right side, you can see, remember, we have our own voter file, so all 13.47 million voters are in our database at the Florida Chamber, and we monitor this every single month. We pay close attention to it. We have a data director. So on the right side there, you see what happened in the month of April, which is the most recent file that we have. Republicans continue to dominate, followed by no party at all, and then in a distant third are Democrat registrations. So again, that's what's happening statewide. Christina, in your part of the world, we took a look at Collier. Over half the registered voters in Collier are Republican, followed by no party, and then of course Democrat. And if you look at last month, that trend continues. So Collier County will become more red, more NPA, and less blue. So that's the trend that's happening in your backyard, no surprise. I want to remind everybody it's an election year, and there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,900 elections this year, not counting local ballot initiatives. I'm going to show you quite a bit of polling here in just a little bit on some of this. The presidential some of the U.S. Senate race and all 6 constitutional amendments. So we'll get into what voters think about all of that here on this phone call, and we'll go from there. In fact, diving into some of the constitutional amendments, there are 6 proposed constitutional amendments on the ballot this fall. We put these 2 up here because, as we've said since 2002, when pregnant pigs got in the Constitution in Florida, which was Amendment 10 back then, more and more of these amendments are just paid for by out-of-state special interests or groups that just want to write a $20, $30, $40 million check. What we warned everyone that happened in California that, is now starting to happen here. So Amendments 3 and 4 are funded in the millions and millions of dollars, $55 million already for the legalizing drugs amendment, which is Amendment 3, and the abortion amendment. We will not be involved in Amendment 4. We don't have a position on that, but we will lead the opposition to Amendment 3. We want to keep drugs out of the state constitution, and that's our position. But anyway, here's just a little bit of background on that. We'll go over the polling in just a little bit. Here's the other 4, in case you haven't seen this. These are the numbers and titles of the other 4 amendments. These were put there by the legislature, and would remind everybody that requires what's called a joint resolution. It's 60% of the House and 60% of the Senate, and the governor has no say on these. It doesn't go to the governor. The governor doesn't sign it. The governor can't veto it. This is strictly a product of the legislature. We'll get into the polling here soon. I mentioned that we do a statewide summit every month. We always try to showcase what local chambers are doing at every one of our summits. We can only do that if you let us know what you're doing. Our next summit, as I mentioned, June 26th, will be in Tampa. We're focused on everything workforce related, from kindergarten readiness to lifelong learning to second chance hiring to CTE. Our Secretary of Commerce is confirmed. Our Secretary of Education, Manny Diaz, will be a speaker. Our Board of Governors, our Chancellor for the University System, Ray Rodriguez, is confirmed. So if workforce is something your chamber's focused on, then bring a couple folks. This is, by the way, almost sold out. I think we have like 21 seats left. So would love to see everybody at this conference in June. In terms of the brand new polling that I mentioned I wanted to go through, we thought since the world's beginning to talk about the presidential and some of the big elections, I wanted to let you know kind of where things stand here. We always ask favorability. Do you think the president, favorable or unfavorable? And just the takeaway here is Biden's upside down in Florida, is 22% more negative than positive, and Trump is essentially even. So something to think about there. What about job approval? Again, Biden's 25 points upside down in Florida. By the way, these are all voters. These are not just Republicans. These are likely voters who are going to vote this fall. Trump has a +7. So you can see in Florida, if the election were today, it certainly looks like Trump would win pretty handily in Florida anyway. And here's sort of the proof point on that. Trump is up by 9 or 10 points. That's something that's important. But look at how Trump's doing with a couple of very important voter blocks. With Hispanic voters in Florida, Trump is up 27 points. To give context to that, we have 2.4 million Hispanic voters out of that 13.4 million. So you can see that's a pretty big voting block that's clearly with Trump. Black Floridians, pretty big voting block too, 1.7 million. Biden is up significantly over Trump with black voters. So expect more narrative along these lines. You see both candidates trying to court different blocks, but that's what the temperature looks like today, and this will change all kinds of ways before we get to November. A lot of questions about the third-party candidate. What does Kennedy do? The answer is nothing. The margin without Kennedy is Trump +9. The margin with Kennedy is Trump +9. So it's a non-factor in Florida, contrary to, popular opinion. Senator Scott, I should say, the Florida Chamber endorsed Senator Scott a couple of weeks ago, And the latest polling, he's winning pretty handily right now. He's up by 15. He's running against a Hispanic opponent from South Florida, who's fairly well known in South Florida, but among Hispanic voters, even though Rick Scott's running against a Hispanic candidate, Rick Scott's up by 36 points with Hispanic voters. And so he's doing very well. Things can change, but we would expect him to continue to move forward to winning that race. What do voters think about Florida versus where the country's headed? Again, you can see right and wrong direction is pretty even for voters in Florida. It's really pretty split along party lines is sort of what happens there. But boy, people are united that the country's headed in the wrong direction. So your typical member thinks, you know, Florida's doing okay, but thinks the country's absolutely headed in the wrong direction. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to members of all political stripes. What about Governor DeSantis? Again, plus 14 on the favorability and plus 14 on how do you think he's doing as governor. These numbers are up significantly from, say, a year and a half, 2 years ago. The conversations are different now. So it's interesting to see how that's leveled out. What are the top issues that people who work for your member companies are talking about? What's on the mind of voters? You know, surprises some people. The number one issue in Florida among voters is illegal immigration, followed by property insurance. And you can read what's on the screen there. But by the way, these are open-ended questions. And so this is what they tell us. They're not picking from a list. This is what they tell us top of head. So important to note there. I mentioned we would share polling on all 6 constitutional amendments with you. And let me just tell you what you're looking at. The top one is Amendment 1. The bottom one is Amendment 6. So, you know, you can just add the numbers there if you want to. Where it says support, oppose, that's what voters think at the moment. And so and by the way, on the right there, the LCH, that stands for local chamber, if you couldn't figure that out. So this is what you told us. According to all of you, none of these are going to pass. According to the voters, we think only one of them is going to pass, and that would be Amendment 2, the right to hunt and fish. There will be significant opposition on Amendment 3. And the rest of them just aren't polling anywhere near where they need to be. Remember, I chaired the statewide campaign to raise the threshold to 60%, and a lot of you helped us get there. 60% is a pretty high burden, and it's going to be tough for any of these folks to get to 60 other than Amendment 2. Amendment 3 has a good chance, but we'll see. Let's see. All right, I'm Andrew. I think you're going to kick us off to the next part. Christina, thanks for joining us the whole time, and we're going to hear from Christina, and then I'll come back and I'll introduce our Chief Financial Officer, and then we've got quite a bit of program after that. So appreciate everybody joining us today. But Andrew?
Thank you, Mark. Really, that's just some great information for chamber leaders to look at, and want to take an opportunity to sort of have one of you talk to us literally about important things that are happening. As you know, later this week, hurricane season begins, and we're joined today by Christina Park, President and CEO of the Greater Naples Chamber. Christina has been a friend of the Florida Chamber for years, from her work at Amplify Clearwater, and now the work that she's doing down in Naples. We really want to invite you on board, Christina, talk to us about things you guys see at the local level. You know, Naples was hit pretty hard a couple years ago, and we're a peninsula, so as you know, we all feel the threat of hurricanes. You know, whenever one happens, we're constantly paying attention to the cone. Also working with our members to see how we can be helpful before, how we can be helpful during, and most importantly, how we can help assist after the impacts, and as we are on the path back to recovery. So, Christina, I'll turn that over to you. We'd love to hear your insight, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Andrew and Mark, for covering this very important topic. Again, it's one we hope we don't have to discuss, but we are a peninsula, and preparation is essential. Whether you're a coastal community or not, this is important to have all of your details and ducks in a row, because it can affect all of us. I'll share, I'm new to the Naples area, so I've got some insights into how remediation looked, but I came from the Tampa Bay market. for the last 13 years. So my recommendations will be a combination of both of those. As a Chamber of Commerce, you are valuable to your community. You're a communication partner. And as you probably have seen from your phone calls, people come to us for literally everything. So it is our job to become that local expert in our community, and as we are that go-to. In the same way that we tell our community partners to get prepared, we should be as well. So my recommendation to you is to stay on mission, remember who it is that you serve, and get your details in line and in order ahead of hurricane season. So you've got a couple days here to get your ducks in a row. The way that we choose to organize ours is very similar to what Andrew just described: preparation, situation, and remediation, right? You've got your three categories. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what we do to prepare for our partners and how we're going to serve them, and then what we do to prepare our operation and how we're going to create some resilience within our operation so we can be there and positioned to serve our community. In the preparation component, so take a lot of time to think through all of the resources that exist in your footprint. As we know with Chambers of Commerce, we have some shared principles, but the art lies in right sizing it to your community. So my recommendation to you is to become that local expert. You should know your emergency management by name, understand your flood zone for your business, in addition to your family, obviously, but for your business, and then all of the existing resources that are in your footprint. Many communities have organized communication tactics around hurricane preparedness. If they don't, I encourage you to consider starting one. Have your county as a partner, anyone that might be in your emergency operations center, your emergency management, law enforcement, et cetera. But you want to be in that loop if you haven't been historically. And it may depend on the number of chambers in your footprint or whatever those dynamics are. Get yourself plugged in because you want to be in the know as you are preparing for the upcoming hurricane season. Communicate to your members. My recommendation is to put together an e-blast over the next week or so ahead of hurricane season, encouraging your partners to be ready. List for them all of those resources that you're finding and uncovering, and make sure they know where to go as that happens. As you prepare your operation, again, knowing your flood zone, there are some simple things. So first of all of your emergency contact and your staff cell phone numbers, those together in a list and encourage every member to print those. So if we find that we're not able to access electronics, we've got a printed file here in our glove box. Whatever method is necessary to communicate to your partners. When you have that emergency plan for your staff, make sure they understand so they're not asking questions when they're trying to protect the safety and security of their own families about what your expectations may be, right? We define those very clearly up front for our team. And then similarly for your members, you want to make sure that they have their hurricane kits ready, that they know where to go to get the sandbags, all of the things that are going to be part of that process. From there, you've got the situation itself, right? So you want to make sure that you're most in the know and the accurate information, and you're taking a look at all of the different graphs, but you're getting that emergency information as up to date as all of the other partners in your footprint. So you're able to be a communication tool to communicate that out to your partners. So all those elements that go into the situation itself. And then we hope that we don't find ourselves there, right? But if remediation is necessary in your footprint, which is what we saw strongly here in Southwest Florida, remember, first of all, you're not alone. There are other partners that have been through this before. Again, the art lies in right sizing it to your community. And so reach out to those partners. I know that our good friend John Lai in Sanibel Captiva really experienced this in the last storm. They were hit very hard. And he has just an incredible playbook of what you can do to help your partners get back up on their feet should they experience some flooding, insurance questions. You are going to be that go-to. And the more visible and present you can be in those moments, the more value you're showing to your members, and the quicker that you can get them back to business, they're counting on you for that. So again, in the same way that you're going to ask your partners to become ready for their individual families as well as their businesses, I encourage you as the chamber to get yourself ready in those three different categories. Prepare well ahead of the storm and just communicate. You'll become that go-to as the storm approaches, and the more prepared you can be, the better for those partners. So hopefully I covered what you were hoping for there, Andrew, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Christina. That's some great information, and really thank you for joining us today. It's a great intro to what the CFO is going to talk to us about, and we always are very cognizant of what you guys are doing. You are the first line of relief for people and support, especially for your members through this time. And we know when past hurricanes have passed through, local chambers are the ones that are leading the way for the business community. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christina, it's Mark. Thanks again. I wondered if your Naples Pier has been in the news the last couple of days. I wondered if you were going to cover that, but we'll just skip over that and let everybody use their own imagination, I guess. And I know that was damaged, and I guess it's fully rebuilt now. So appreciate that. Before I introduce our CFO, around the country there have been a lot of deadly tornadoes, and we get calls. Look, tornadoes are devastating, and, there's a lot of loss of life this year with tornadoes. We've had them in Florida. We had loss of life in Florida from tornadoes. But hurricanes cause exponentially more damage across, 40, 50, 60, 80 miles, whereas tornadoes tend to be blocks. And so loss of life is loss of life. But keep in mind, while the rest of the country is thinking tornadoes are, how in the world do you insure with tornadoes? Hurricanes just are exponentially bigger challenge than tornadoes. And so just want to remind everybody of that. I've been getting some calls from people in Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, saying, why are y'all worried about hurricanes? Tornadoes are the big thing. So I'm just passing that on, just point of information. So Christina, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate you joining us today. And when Andrew sends out a recap, we'll make sure everybody has your contact info. Because the truth is, we have well over 100 chambers in Florida who are doing really good work on hurricane prep and working with the CFO's office on MySafe Florida and all kinds of things. And so the more we can share best practice-wise, the better off we're going to be. So I just really want to thank you again for that. So on our next slide, if Andrew moves us to the next slide, we are so fortunate today to have our good friend, all of your good friend, the Honorable, as it says on the Zoom call, Jimmy Patronis with us today. Jimmy, it looks like you're mobile, so we appreciate that. But just, in the event we have one person who's been under a rock and doesn't know your background, let me tell a little bit of a story, and then Jimmy, I'm going to hand it right over to you. I know you're on a limited time frame, I think 10 or 12 minutes, so I want to get right to you. But as everyone knows, Jimmy Patronis is actually a small business owner. They've got a family restaurant in Bay County, over 60 years old. If you haven't been to Bay County, go there just so you can go to his restaurant. He also serves as Florida's chief financial officer and fire marshal, among other things. He's in his second term, but he was actually appointed by Governor Rick Scott, who I just talked about a few minutes ago. Before that, Jimmy was in the Florida legislature for several years, I think from 2006 to 2014, maybe something like that. In the middle of that, we had a contentious bill on education that Jimmy was a champion of, Senate Bill 6. We were trying to pay teachers more for better performance. And Jimmy, you might remember it. I will never forget what a servant's heart you have, because at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, there were only two groups in the gallery in the House chambers, and it was the Florida Chamber on one side and the Teachers Union on another. And at 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning, Jimmy brought us all coffee, the Florida Chamber team. That had never happened before, hasn't happened since, but it really speaks to the heart that this man has. All of y'all are talking about property insurance. I know it's the #1 issue you told us you wanted to hear about. And so we thought nobody better than the guy that's leading the effort and overseeing what's going on to join the call and tell us a bit about it. As I turn it, we might. Jimmy, are you still there? It almost looks like we lost you for a second. Well. All right, while we get him back, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I was going to tell you there. Jimmy, while he was in the legislature, he had a 99% voting average with the Florida Chamber. And in addition to that, he was a 4-time Distinguished Advocate Award winner. So that's pretty rare, but that's CFO Patronis, and we're lucky to have him. We're going to give him a minute. I know he's mobile. It looks like we lost the connection, so I'll wait to hear what the team thinks. If it looks like it might be a while, I'll just move us forward to the next part of our program. So Sheridan, looks like you're standing by and ready. So Andrew, what do you think?
Trying to resend him the link right now to make sure he has it since he is remote.
Well, why don't we, just to respect everyone else's time, Sheridan, why don't we, if you want to advance us, Andrew, Sheridan, why don't we go ahead? Sheridan, as everyone knows, is our senior research economist, and she's actually in Broward today working with all of our regional members in the Broward area. And she's prepared a presentation about what's going on in our economy in Florida. So, Sheridan, why don't you at least get started with this? And if all goes well, we'll get interrupted by CFO Petronas, and we'll do what we do when that happens. So anyway, floor is yours. Thanks, Sheridan.
Yeah, sounds good, Mark. Thank you. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So before I dive into some of the specifics, just to bring back what Mark talked about a little bit earlier, as I talk about research for Florida's economy, kind of our overarching goal and what we continue to look ahead to is 2030. So specifically, our goal is to grow Florida to be a top 10 global economy by 2030. And we know that Florida's changing, Florida's growing. And so as we look out to 2030, we expect there to be 2.8 million net new residents, 1.34 million net new jobs. We're going to see 40 million more annual visitors per year on top of what we're already seeing. And then there's about 2.5 million more drivers on Florida's road is what we expect. Next slide. So looking at our overall economy, our current GDP, which is how we measure the size of our economy, it's our gross domestic product. It measures all of the final goods that Florida produces. It's about $1.62 trillion. And even though Florida is the fourth largest economy in the country, behind California, Texas, and New York, we're actually growing at the fastest pace. Over the last 4 years, we've grown by over 40%, and that's greater than California, significantly greater than California and New York, and then even above Texas, which was that number 2 economy. And if we look at, even if we were to adjust for inflation, you might say, okay, well, we're seeing a lot of inflation. That's obviously why that number might be growing. Even if you were to adjust for that inflation, we're still growing by nearly 19%, and we're still number 1. And if we look at what's making up that economy, the fastest growth in this economy is in transportation, professional services, and retail trade. And so we're seeing over 50% growth in each of those areas of our GDP. And so Florida has a very diverse economy. We're not just tourism, as some people might think. We have other sectors of our economy that are growing rapidly. And I think I saw Jimmy hop back on, so I'll transition back to Mark real quick, and then I'll wrap up in a little bit.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Sheridan. And Jimmy, I'm going to kick it back to you. Thanks for dialing back in there. I don't know, maybe that might have been on our end, but I think the point of the slide that Sheridan was just on was, since you were elected back in 18, I know you were appointed in 17 and then elected in 18, Florida's GDP is up over 40%, fastest in the country. So thank you for the role you've played in that. I was also saying you have a 99% voting record with the Florida Chamber and 4-time Distinguished Advocate Award winner. Almost nobody else can say that. So appreciate our friendship. Thanks for joining us today. Obviously, property insurance is on everyone's mind, and you're at the tip of that spear. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say today, and we'll go from there. So Jimmy, thanks for joining. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Mark. Yes, I'm sitting there. I'm enjoying all the polling information you're providing everybody. And so I'm set up in a car. I'm doing a press conference with Senator Scott here in a few minutes. And if it sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel, it's because we've cranked up the AC in the car because my iPad shut down right in the middle of your introduction with the overheat alert. So you can't make this stuff up. Anyway, it's an honor to be here with y'all. Y'all have been just an amazing partner with my office through the years over champion good policy. And the only reason why I've got all those awards with you is because I'm like the oldest guy left in the process. When I started off working with y'all in 2005, my hair was a lot thicker. It was a lot darker. I had no children. My wife and I had just been married a year. We're about to be married 20 years this coming fall. So again, y'all are family, and it's truly an honor to be here with you, and especially with all of our chamber leadership from around the state. Thank you for what you do, and want to make sure you understand that my office is your office. Whenever you bring your boards up, whenever you come up to Tallahassee, we've got a brand new conference room in the front of the office. You can just please reach out to me, and we'd love to reserve it for you if you want it for meeting space, drop off your stuff, order lunch in. When you're making your rounds in Tallahassee, we'd love to accommodate you right there down the hall from Governor DeSantis' office. But again, thank you all for what the chamber does. Yeah, insurance is the number one issue that we are dealing with. And we've been taking our show on the road some, and the attitude that I've got is in talking to my staff, I said, you know what? I said, I'm ready to go out there and start, touting the successes that we've had in the state and explain to people, where the trend is going with property insurance. And there gets anxiety in the office. Man, this is a volatile issue. I said, you know what? You can't divorce yourself from this issue. This is something that's affecting every single person in the state of Florida. No matter if you live, own, or rent, whatever it is, you're being touched by the higher cost of inflation, interest rates, and those are the biggest cost drivers with insurance. So as Mark was touching on, there's some things that have been good for the state of Florida. We're in the best fiscal health that we've ever been in the history of the state. We've paid down $5 billion in debt over the last 7 years. So we're doing all the right things by the fiscal health of the state. But, a couple things that I touch on with people that they don't think about. Right now, states' revenues are flush. But one of the drivers of why our state's revenues are so flush is because of inflation. Every single person on this Zoom call right now is paying more for gas, for cheese, for eggs, for meat, you name it. You're paying more for everything. When you go to the grocery store, when you fill up that shopping cart, it costs twice as much today as it did 2 years ago. So, the twisted part about all that is you have, in this case, you're spending more money, maybe getting, the same amount of goods as you were 2 years ago, but you're spending more money. Well, the state of Florida is collecting more sales tax because of that. We're a commission-based economy. So, that does help the fiscal health of the state. And the other thing that I'll touch on that a lot of people don't think about, but the state of Florida, we make money off of hurricanes. Again, same issue is if with the state of Florida, in this case, I'm in Fort Myers Beach today. I'm about to do a press conference with Senator Scott. But in the case of Fort Myers Beach and Hurricane Ian created and generated over $20 billion in property casualty insurance claims. So that's $20 billion, a non-typical revenue that is going to be spent in the state of Florida. Not every year do you have $20 billion in claims being paid out in the state. But so you have this non-typical revenue that has been dumped into the state's economy by Mother Nature. And now you think about all the shingles, the studs, the gallons of paint, the ceramic tile, the linoleum, all those things, the televisions, the wardrobes, the cars, all those are sales tax generators for the state from this Mother Nature driven event that, this Mother Nature driven event that is ultimately creating more revenue for the state of Florida. So I tell people all the time, and I advocate to the legislature that money, it's that sales tax with the case of Hurricane Ian, it's $1.4 billion of new money to the state's bottom line. And I tell them that's pain and suffering money. That's money that people are dealing with a new cost of living challenge because of what Mother Nature did. So I've always been an advocate. Those non-typical dollars that we have gotten to the state's coffers, I feel, we're morally obligated to return it back to the properties of the state of Florida, the taxpayers of the state of Florida, those that are feeling the crunch at the point of purchase with insurance. And so this is what we've been doing with the My Safe Florida Home program. This is what we've been doing with the sales tax exemption on windows and doors. If there's the biggest takeaway that I would like to impress upon you today in our conversation is June 30th, the sales tax exemption on windows and doors sunsets. So if I could encourage you to contact your membership and let them know, hey, if you're looking at taking advantage of replacing your windows and doors at your house, place that order and pay for them prior to June 30th. Take advantage of the sales tax exemption. When you're buying $10,000 to $15,000 worth of windows and doors, that's a significant amount of sales tax that the state of Florida is letting you keep in your pocket. So please review that opportunity, push it out as a member alert, make sure that we're doing right by the citizens and your members. And what I've always said, and Mark Wilson's good friend Alan Bentz always said, Alan always told me, he says, the citizens of Florida spend their money better than Tallahassee does. And that's something that's been ingrained in me, and I truly believe it, that, you know, we need to always be leaning forward to put those dollars back in the pockets of your members and our citizens. So let me talk a little bit. I can belabor the good fiscal health of the state of Florida, but I want to focus a little bit more what I think is the crux of this, and this is our Florida insurance market. Now, in 2022, we had a special session in December. You've had multiple special sessions dealing with insurance, but that 2022 special session in December was transformational. We changed our man-made problems in the state of Florida. And what I mean by that is when I would go to New York City and I would meet with Lloyd's of London, or I'd meet with Chubb, or I would meet with JP Morgan, and I would plead to them, what can I do to get you to bring capital to the state of Florida to invest in the state of Florida's insurance market? And I would give them my business card. I'd write my cell phone number on it. Let me know what I can do to help you make that transition. I'm going to be there for 3 more years at the time. What can I do to help? And the resounding, repeated answer I got from all of those investors was, Jimmy, we can model for hurricanes in the state of Florida. We cannot model for your litigation environment. So we had an environment where in the state of Florida, 7%, and you've heard the statistics, 7% of all insurance claims nationwide originated out of the state of Florida. Yet over 70% of all litigation originated out of the state of Florida. I mean, so that literally, that's saying out of every 10 claims that an insurance carrier received, 7 of them were handled by an attorney. So with that type of business environment in the state of Florida, the insurance carrier said, you know what, I'm done doing business in the state of Florida, or those that tried to make it went insolvent and filed bankruptcy. So we had a series of bankruptcies in the state of Florida. That's never a good thing. That is a lot of struggle that has taken place with that policyholder trying to get replaced. But the good thing about the state of Florida, we've got multiple redundancies to make sure that policyholder's always got a home. But look, what we have still seen is we have seen incredible increases in premiums. So the state of Florida, we've looked at a number of different solutions. We looked at, back when Jeb Bush was governor, there was actually a program where they did low interest loans to insurance companies from the state of Florida to help them with their solvency issues. And look, different times create different appetites for different solutions. And, you know, there was definitely a political feeling and undercurrent in Florida that, you know, the state of Florida can't write checks to bail out insurance companies. This was, you know, as all these different solutions are being thrown out there, you know, you get the political stomach for some of this stuff that is palatable and is not. So what we did, remember that non-typical money that I'm telling you about that comes from hurricanes? We started dumping that money back into a program called the My Safe Florida Home Program. Some of you are familiar with it, some of you are not. It's mysafeflhome.com. If y'all could please put that in the notes for people to see, mysafeflhome.com. That's the My Safe Florida Home Program that we administer. So the most recent legislative session, and back in the spring, the legislature put $230 million in that program. Up to $10,000 per applicant gets a grant from the state of Florida. That's free money. That's money that you don't have to pay back to harden your home. So the thought process is, we give you that money, you harden your home, you replace the windows and doors, you make your home less risk to damage. There's less risk to damage, it's less likely the carrier is going to have to deal with a claim. If it's less likely to have to deal with a claim, your premiums go down. And I'll use myself, for example. I did not use the money, full disclosure, but I did what the program prescribed. So in May of 2023, I ordered windows and doors for my house. By the end of the summer, they were installed. Now, mind you, in that 18 months leading up to May of 2023, and the end of 2023, my insurance had over doubled. Okay. So My insurance had gone from $2,000 to $4,000 to $6,000 to November of 2023, it hit over $9,000. So May of 2023, I made the investments, ordered the windows and doors. Then those windows and doors got installed. November rolls around, I get my new property insurance bill. Now it's over $9,000. My house is 2,600 square feet. It was built in 1990. It's pretty typical for a lot of parts of the state of Florida. In December of 2023, actually December 28th, 2023, all my improvements were made to my house. My bubble was tougher. It was less likely to be penetrated by hurricane force winds because of the hardening that I had done to the house. On December 28th of 2023, I had a windstorm mitigation inspection done. State of Florida pays for those for you, okay? That windstorm mitigation inspection is like a very deep dive home inspection of your house. It documents what your windows are made of. It documents if you got hurricane clips. It documents when the permits were pulled, when your roof was replaced. All this then gets submitted through a certified copy to your insurance company. Again, December 28th, my insurance premium was over $9,000. January 2nd, I got a check back to my insurance company for $4,500. And that was my new premium moving forward. I had a harder home. My premium had dropped over in half. And in the environment that we're in now, because of programs like this, because we dodged some bullets last year with only one significant storm with Idalia hitting the state of Florida, the insurance market is starting to see a recovery. We've started to see a softening in what's called the reinsurance market. The reinsurance market is insurance for insurance companies, okay? And I'm going to pick a fight a little bit with the reinsurance guys right now because these guys, you know, they're motivated, in my opinion, to sell reinsurance. This is how they make a commission when they sell reinsurance to the carriers. But, you know, we get University of Colorado, which I really don't understand why they care about the state of Florida, other than people pay them to care about the state of Florida. But Colorado comes out and they say, oh, it's going to be the most active hurricane season next year than we've ever seen. You know, NOAA comes out and says something. I tell people all the time, it says, it's not if, it's when a hurricane's hit the state of Florida. We're probably going to be hit by a hurricane every single year. But what you've done is you're creating a narrative out there that allows those reinsurance companies to say, oh man, the state of Florida is going to be more active hurricane season. We need to charge more for insurance rates. It just frustrates me. You know, I feel like it's a battle of information at times. So, you know, this is what, you know, at least I love about Mark and his team is they're constantly there in the trenches with us, fighting good against evil in the legislative process. And as we were able to take on some of the evil because of the man-made litigation, we took that problem off the table. We closed those loopholes. So again, my fight is still going to stay in that insurance environment as I start to hold those carriers, those reinsurance carriers accountable and making sure that they are truly assessing risk in the state of Florida in the proper way. We have taken away the litigation risk that was there. We are now investing in the state of Florida to the tune of over $1 billion in hardening dollars to make our homes less susceptible to hurricane damage risk. So we're moving things in the right direction. And the big takeaway that I want to make sure that you and your members understand is, you know, every single year insurance companies have to file with the state of Florida for their rates. In the state of Florida, we do an audit on them. We do a look back. We see how much losses they've had. And that will then determine where we feel their rates should lie, okay? So about 19 carriers so far in the state of Florida have filed for rates, 10 of which are they're flatline, okay? Considering when we were seeing carriers just a year ago asking for 26 and 30% increases, okay? So 10 of these carriers are flatline, 9 of which have had for rate decreases. We are going in the right direction. We are getting the type of premium relief that we told people we would get them. I told people in December of 2022, when we made those litigation reforms, I said we would need 12 to 18 months to see results. Here we're at month 15 and we're seeing exactly that. I told you that was what we were going to do. I kept my word and we're seeing that trend take place. Now, granted, you know, you can roll your eyes as I have. I said, well, Jimmy, gosh, my rate's been up 100%. So, you know, a drop of 8 or 9% That's still coming off historic highs. The good thing about the underlying is we're seeing the trend going in the right direction. Okay. In the case of the state of Texas, the state of Louisiana, the state of California, none of those trends exist. All of those other states, those coastal states, the South Carolinas and North Carolinas, they have not taken their medicine the way the state of Florida has. So you're going to see in those other markets there, you're going to see higher rates. Wall Street Journal had a story earlier this week where all those states are seeing higher rates, and Florida is a flatline state. So again, we've done what we needed to do. Now we just need to kind of hold on and weather the storm. Now, some people may be saying, well, gosh, I'm on a fixed income, or, I'm a senior. I don't have other forms of income coming in. My insurance premium's gone up. How much longer do I have to hold on till we see any significant rate relief or any solutions? So touching back on this My Safe Florida Home program, the average participant in that program who takes advantage of it, and you don't have to have the state's money to do it. It just makes it nice. But if you want to make those improvements on your home, you will see those savings yourself. With the My Safe Florida Home program, Security First, I was with them at a press conference last week. The average participant in the My Safe Florida Home program, who happened to be a Security First policyholder, saw their insurance drop 39.6%. Okay. So again, the trends are there. The average participant in our program is seeing a drop of over $1,000 a year in premium. So remember I told you earlier that the legislature put $230 million into this program. Well, one, the governor has not signed the budget yet. Two, that money does not go live until at least the minimum July 1st. And then the Senate president and the Speaker of the House thought they needed to prioritize those on fixed income or those that are seniors. Those two populations probably have the least amount of holding power in a rising insurance market. So what we have done, we've got a waiting list of people that are wanting to access that $230 million. We have then culled through that list. We've had a solicitation with them and say, tell us your age, tell us your wages. We've categorized them, and per the legislative's instructions, we are going to prioritize those two audiences first. We're going to focus on the seniors and those on fixed income, and then we're going to move forward and continue to start paying out those $10,000 claims. I have been advocating with the legislature, and I'm kind of to treat it a lot like the Hometown Heroes program. I want that $10,000 or the My Safe Florida program to be perpetually funded. But also, I've suggested is treat it as a $10,000 zero interest loan. Say Mark wants to take the $10,000 and harden his home, and then he sees his rates goes down. He's got that relief. You know what? Then allow that $10,000 to help somebody else down the road. So then Mark then decides he's going to, upscale or downscale, but he's going to sell his home. Let that $10,000 then be released from the equity that's been invested in his home, go back to the state and help somebody else, kind of like a revolving loan program. So this is where I've been pushing the legislature to want to see this program say fiscally responsible back to the taxpayers and in a moving forward environment. But then you can also see where the entrepreneurial comes forward, where there's a contractor who's got a crew. He goes and buys a house that has needed improvements on it. They use the $10,000. They make the improvements. He then sells the house as a hardened home that should qualify for lower insurance rates. The state gets their $10,000 back. He then reapplies with a new home and starts the process all over again. So it's like a $10,000 incentive to get those older homes retrofitted so they're less risk in the market. So again, I keep on throwing ideas out into the legislative process, and a lot of it comes from what I learned all my years as a member of the Bay County Chamber or the Panama City Beach Chamber, or just what I learned in the business community is you got to lean forward and sometimes bring some business ideas to the table when the legislature is making decisions. And this is why it's just so important that your partnership with the Florida Chamber of Commerce stays strong. You engage them, and especially those legislators. There's 15 seats in the House of Representatives that are up. You need to make sure those 15 members that are going to be elected representing your districts in Tallahassee understand the importance and the role of having a strong, vibrant economic economy that you are, to me, in my opinion, you're the key in each one of your communities and spearheading. I know I could not be here today if it wasn't for the knowledge and expertise and partnerships that we've had with the various chambers over the year. And you are so key to quality economic development and commerce in our state. So again, I can't stress enough. I'm happy to answer more questions regarding the insurance environment. The biggest thing I wanted to give you the snapshot on is the trends are going the right way, that the money is there, still moving forward to provide grants in the My Safe Florida Home program. Again, that's mysafeflhome.com. Those are all good things, but I tell people all the time, it's not a sprint, it's a march. Every single year that I've been in office, we fight insurance fraud. We fight bad actors in the public adjusting space. We fight bad actors in the contractor space. After a disaster, I get very passionate, very upset because people are vulnerable. They don't have electricity. They don't have access to their cell phones. Their house has been destroyed. And these predators come and canvass the neighborhoods and get in between them and their insurance claims. So, it's pretty appropriate. I'm down here in Fort Myers Beach. We were driving the beach this morning. You still see a lot of devastation from Hurricane Ian. And it's terrible, but you see the community coming back. And so we're never going to leave. We're always going to be there. We're always going to hold your hand. With Hurricane Ian, we had, I believe, 11 different insurance villages in over 2022, 2023, where we brought all the insurance companies together here in the market just to help people close their claims. And contrary to some people's beliefs, insurance companies do like to close claims, and we like to make sure they close claims. So again, if my office can ever come, like I said, if you've got a breakfast meeting or a lunch meeting and you want us to come and do a more in-depth presentation and provide some collateral material to you and your members, just reach out to my office or reach out to me. I'm Jimmy.Patronis, Patronis, at myfloridacfo.com, myflcfo.com, or you can just you can call me 850-583-1817. I tell people all the time, I don't like taking naps in the afternoon. I think this is the best job I've ever had in the state. And I tell my people all the time in the office, in the restaurant business, it's very competitive. Anybody can go anywhere for their birthday, their anniversary, that special occasion. And so if you don't take care of the customer in the restaurant business, somebody else will. In my office, I tell my team all the time, if you don't take care of the customer, I'm going to find somebody else that will. And so I'm addicted to calling my employees on Saturday night, Sunday mornings, you name it. Whenever I get a phone call from somebody who's got a problem, I'm calling my team member to get it fixed right then and there. And I tell folks, sometimes I'm CFO, sometimes I'm congressman, sometimes I'm county commissioner, sometimes I'm dog catcher. People call for everything because they know that they see me as part of somebody that's in government. And so I tell you, this is the time with all these new faces running for office for you to engage those new members of the legislature, get to know them, exchange information, and hold them and me accountable. It's a lot of fun service in the state of Florida. It's a great place to do it. And again, could not have the environment we've got in Florida if it wasn't for the stability and the leadership of Mark and Andrew and everybody at the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Really, really first-class operation. Mark, what else do you want me to add?
Jimmy, thanks so much for spending so much time with us. I know you went over on how much time you had, and you're getting ready for your deal with Rick there. Please tell him we all said hello, and love when you two get together, good things happen. Jimmy, you answered a lot of our questions, and what we'll do is, everybody on the line today is now better equipped to talk to their board, to their local media, to their members about what's happening on property insurance. And I think your point, the trend is in the right direction. We really appreciate that. Also, you mentioned the billboard trial lawyers, and I think, what was it? 250,000 lawsuits were filed in 1 week. Once the trial lawyers knew that this was actually going to happen in 2023, more than 250,000 lawsuits were filed. And that's going to take time to make it through the courts, and that's still going to be driving costs up. And, you know, the price of homes and the price of rebuilding homes is way up compared to 5 or 7 years ago. So it's amazing that what you've been able to do, we already have rates flattening and going back in the right direction again. That's really good news. So, Jimmy, what we'll do is we'll share your contact info, including your offer to host local chambers when they're in Tallahassee. We typically have about 55 chambers come up during sessions, so they can go ahead and start booking those now, I assume. And then we'll share your contact info. And if we get any other questions, we'll be sure to get them directly to you so you can address them directly. But thanks so much for joining us today, and we hope you can rejoin us again real soon.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to take the show on the road. We did Clearwater last month. We did Miami last month. We did roundtables with the insurance commissioner, myself, a lot of members of our team. And again, you know, just answering people's questions. You know what? We can't shy away from this. This is our job. Again, hold us accountable. Invite us. We'll come to your town.
Sounds great. Jimmy, thanks so much. Safe travels. Say hi to Rick for all of us. Take care.
Will do. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Sheridan, thanks for being flexible. And I think you were just telling us that our GDP grew by more than 40% since 2019. So we'll take it right back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So yeah, as I was talking about, just the size of our economy, it's that $1.62 trillion right now. It's grown by over 40% over the last 4 years. I can go to the next slide. And the thing that I was ending on there was how diverse our economy is. So you might think of Florida's economy, a lot of people, especially outside the state, think of Florida and they think of tourism. But when you look at what parts of our economy are growing the most rapidly, there are 3 areas of our economy that grew by over 50% over those 4 years. So that's transportation, professional services, and retail trade. And some of those are involved in tourism. I mean, all of them are, but especially that retail trade, that transportation. But overall, all of these different parts of our economy interact together, and that's what makes Florida's economy so diverse. So you can go to the next slide. Looking at our economy and our economic growth, a big part of that is the population growth that we've seen. So we know that people are continuing to come to Florida at a rapid pace. And we know that Florida is #1 for net income migration in the country. We talk about it a lot, but it's $39.2 billion over the year. And that breaks down to $4.48 million per hour moving into Florida. And so that income came from 48 of the 50 states. There's only 2 states that we lost income to, and that's Tennessee and Wyoming. But we did lose people moving out to 14 states. And that means that ultimately the people moving into Florida on average had higher incomes than those who were leaving. And that high income migration, that's good. That means that people are wanting to move to Florida, wanting to bring their income to Florida. But that contributes to higher spending, fuels that GDP, but it also contributes to higher prices. I'm going to talk some about housing, inflation, and that is a piece of that is people moving into the state, having those high incomes. And we really want to focus as well on the people that we're losing because that's our workforce. That's the foundation of our economy. It's not just higher spending. It's what's fueling our economy, fueling our businesses. And so when we're losing those 14 people, we might be losing, or those 14 states, we're losing part of our workforce. The next slide, please. Looking at who is leaving, so who is moving out of Florida. We have some data on who the people are, especially on the average that are moving out of Florida. So the median age of people moving out of Florida is 32. That might seem young, but it's actually the second highest in the country, only behind Nevada. And so Florida's percentage of ages 65 to 74 leaving the state is also 4th highest in the nation. So when we're looking at the people who are actually leaving Florida on the whole overall in the state, it's actually much higher than we would have expected, much older than we would expect. And part of that could be the housing market. So the reality of Florida's housing market is that people who bought their homes for an affordable price at one point in Florida, they might be taking advantage of those higher selling prices for homes now. And so they might be moving out of Florida to states like Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina. Those are the top 3 where we've seen people move to. And so they might be taking advantage of the higher prices that they can sell their home for, moving to a state that's a little more affordable. And something in the data that really reinforces this is the fact that 47% of people moving out of Florida are homeowners. And that's greater than the US state average, greater than most states. That's greater, it's about 44.8% at the state level, 47% at the national level, 47% at the state level. Transitioning now on the next slide just giving a high-level overview, at most of the statistics that I talk about are tracked on the floridascorecard.org. We track things at both the state and the county level. I'm talking about things at the state level, but if you hear a metric and you want to know what it is in your county, you can find that at the floridascorecard.org. These cover things like the 1.34 million net new jobs that are going to be needed by 2030 in the state, a lot of labor market statistics, the number of open jobs, the unemployment rate, consumer sentiment, state level, and then some housing statistics as well. So we can look at employment is one of those metrics that's on the Florida scorecard. It's in the next slide. And so Florida's employment is nearing 10 million people and 10 million jobs in April of 2024. So that was 45,300 jobs added over the month. After a few months of minimal in 2024, and actually last month was actually a decline in jobs, this is the largest monthly employment increase this year after those last few months. And Florida gained 240,000 jobs over the year annually, so it's a 2.5% growth rate. You can also look at unemployment on the next slide. So shifting focus from employment to unemployment, Florida's unemployment rate ticked up slightly in April to 3.3%. The unemployment rate has been slowly rising, but that's not anything to be wary of. You might see that red tile and think, okay, Florida's unemployment rate is increasing, that's a bad thing, but that's not necessarily true. We still have a very low unemployment rate compared to the rest of the country, and it's actually approaching a more natural level. When we talk about natural unemployment, something that's pretty stable for an economy to rest at, that's usually between 3 and 4%. So we're right there in the natural unemployment rate level. And that actually means that there's a lot more flexibility and stability in our labor market. And it allows for a lot more balance. So that's important when we look at our labor market that has a workforce shortage. So right now, for every 100 open jobs, there are only 86 Floridians who are looking for work. That has improved, at least in numbers. We'll talk. Skills are a little bit different when you look at the mismatch of the jobs that are open and the skills that people have. There definitely really is that workforce gap. But the numbers themselves, we have seen a narrowing in that workforce shortage, and that higher unemployment rate is in part due to that higher unemployment rate. This varies a lot by region though. So you look at somewhere like Holmes County, they actually have far more unemployed people than open jobs. But then somewhere like Alachua County, there's a much bigger cap. They're having a much bigger workforce shortage, 58 unemployed people for every 100 open jobs. Now transitioning to inflation. Look at the next slide. So inflation is a big topic on the mind of consumers, businesses. You see it when you go to the grocery store, you see it as a business leader. And so our research team tracks inflation at the national and then the regional level on the Florida scorecard. So there actually was a drop in the inflation rate in April, and that was expected. We actually expected drops in inflation every month in 2024, and this is the first time that it's actually happened, that we've seen a drop. So right now the national inflation is 3.4%, and the southern region inflation is slightly lower at 3.3%. Tampa and Miami metro areas also did see drops in inflation, but they're still very high compared to the rest of the country. Tampa is coming a little bit more in line with what we're seeing across the country, but Miami continues to have the highest metro area inflation in the whole nation. We can also look at this by category on the next slide. So in addition to tracking it overall, we can see that there are annual inflation changes by different categories. These are just a few of some of the major categories. We can get data on inflation everywhere from overall housing to eggs specifically. So if we look just at these categories, some categories like food and energy, those are volatile. So we've seen a lot of variation over the past year. We don't necessarily look there for the big trends. We look at the overall rate or at things that are a little more stable like housing. So housing consistently has high inflation rates. And in Miami and Tampa, they're especially high. Miami has a 5.3% inflation rate for housing. Looking at the housing market on the next slide. So one area that we track again on the scorecard is the single family housing market. So closed sales in April were higher than they were a year ago, but overall the sales are still down greatly from where they were pre-pandemic. And you can see that the rolling annual average, which is on the graph the graph, it's significantly lower than it was in pre-pandemic, or it's significantly lower than it reached in the height of 2021. However, this has been holding steady the past few months, the number of sales, and we're seeing a stabilizing in the housing market, which is what we forecasted for the housing market. I'll touch a little bit on where we're at with our forecast that we released in January, but we're seeing what we expected to happen in the housing market come to fruition. We're seeing a stabilizing, and part of that is due to active listings. So that's in the next slide. As sales are stabilizing, so are the prices. We're seeing just slight increases in prices, and a big part of that is due to active listings being up. So we're seeing a restocking in the single-family housing market. It's up actually 52.9% from this time last year. There were 90,000 new building permits in April of 2024, and that's compared to about 58,000 last year. And this increase in inventory causes the prices to stabilize because there's more options, there's more homes on the market, and so we're seeing more stable prices. And we expect that to continue. We don't expect the prices to be going down in Florida, but we do expect them to stay more stable than they have been. If you look at just a few years ago, the median sale price in Florida was about 200 to 250,000, around there for a couple of years. Now it's over 400,000. So we're not expecting to go back to those 200,000 prices, but we're not expecting to increase as rapidly as we have been over the last couple of years. And a big part of that is due to that restocking in the housing market. We can also look at rent in the next slide. So looking at rent, rising rent costs have also been a big part of concern for consumers. Single-family homes are not the only part of the housing market. So if we look at the median Florida rent, it's about $1,500 right now, and that's the 12th highest in the country. Before the pandemic, we were 14th highest in the country, and now we've transitioned up and held steady at 12th highest in the country for our median rent. And this varies a lot across the state. Rent in Leon County is not the same as rent in Palm Beach, Broward, Miami, especially, which have some of the highest rental prices in the country. And so that rising rent is not unique to Florida, though. So the trend is the same at the national level, the same in most states. However, towards the end of 2020, Florida's rent grew exponentially compared to the US. You can see there on the graph, same trending, both going upward, but somewhere around April of 2020 to mid-summer of 2020, we skyrocketed in our rent prices. And part of that could be that large amount of people that came down to Florida. It fuels our economy, it fuels our GDP, but it also is increasing those rental prices. And the median rent this month, we are seeing some stabilizing as well here. Even though we've seen rapid increase, we are starting to see some stabilizing like we are in the housing market. Rent this month is actually 2% lower than it was a year ago. We also have some updates to new tourism figures on the next slide. So new updated visitation statistics, and these are released by Visit Florida, they bring exciting news of record-breaking tourism in Florida. So the number of visitors in 2023, it surpassed the previous record in 2022. This is well above anything that we saw pre-pandemic. This is not just a recovery, but this is a new standard in Florida for the number of people that are coming and visiting here. So we had over 140 million total visitors in 2023. Of these travelers, about 129 million were domestic, and then 11.5 million were from foreign countries. And that was a record year. And we also saw the first quarter of 2024 was also historic. We had the highest quarterly visitation on record. So as we look ahead to what's going to happen for tourism in Florida this year, we expect it to be another record year because just this quarter alone, quarter one of 2024, was a record for the state. And finally, I talked about that forecast a little bit, just to keep an update on it. We released this in January. It's on the next slide. We released our forecast in January at our Economic Outlook and Job Solutions Summit, and we like to keep tabs on where we are with that, especially as we're now in quarter two of 2024, which came very quickly. And as we look at what's happened, one of the few areas that I want to highlight, we expected there to be small interest rate cuts in the second half of 2024. And as I mentioned, April was the first inflation decline of the year. And when the inflation comes down, that's what the Federal Reserve is looking for to start to decline those interest rates. So that's a good sign for those interest rate cuts. We still do expect them to be at the end of 2024, maybe beginning of 2025. The housing market is, as I said, right in line with what we forecasted. We have median sale prices in that range of $415,000 to $450,000. And then the median rental estimate is approaching the higher end of what we expected, about $1,500. Again, active listings are up 52.9% year over year. That's significant. And so we're going to see the stabilizing in the housing market. And finally, our job growth. So we expect there to be about 1% to 1.5% job growth. Through quarter one, there was about 0.06% job growth. So we actually could see higher than we were expecting, but that's probably going to stabilize or fluctuate a little bit and meet that about 1.5% is what I would say by the end of the year. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on this as 2024 is flying by. And every month when we meet, I'll be continuing to give updates on where we're at with that forecast. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheridan, and some very encouraging information, great news on the latest tourism numbers, and just want to wish you and the rest of the team safe travels on your way back from Broward later today. So thanks everyone for having me today. I have a couple of announcements that I want to make, some materials that are available for all of you to look at this for the end of session materials that are available for you that we released in the last couple of weeks. So first off, we released our legislative report card about 2 weeks ago. This is our grades of where each legislator, how each legislator voted with the business community. And I want to point out that this is a transparent grading process. So first thing is that we release our legislative agenda at the beginning of every legislative session in the form of where we stand. Each legislator receives a letter before every vote that they take, a Your Vote Matters letter that is signed by me and sent to them before every vote to let them know whether or not we support or oppose something, including any amendments. And so basically their grade shouldn't be a surprise. They are earned, not given. And we really take the transparency process very seriously because it's important that each legislator can look at their grade and say, yeah, I voted that way, or, oh yeah, I did get that letter. So the report card is now available online. You can see the grade or you can see the link on the bottom of your screen on how to access the report card. This year's grades were a little bit higher than on average than last year. Both the House and Senate grades were higher, and then we had a handful of more A's. We also had less F's than last year, and the report card encompasses over 5,700 votes. I encourage all of you to go to the report card. The link is on the bottom of the screen, or the website is on the bottom of the screen. And look to see how your lawmakers, your local lawmakers, voted during this legislative session, and use that information when you're making decisions about endorsements or having conversations over the summer with your local legislators. The report card goes into great detail of what they voted with us on, what they might have voted against us on. And my team, Frank, Chad, Tiffany, even Andrew, we're all available to answer any questions of why we scored something, why we might have cared about something, if that wasn't already clear. And then we also released a couple weeks ago our Distinguished Advocate Award winners. And we had 15 in total. You can see all of them on the screen, and really want you to congratulate them and recognize them as they're showing up to your local chamber events and are doing events in the community. These legislators all tirelessly fought for the passage of pro-jobs legislation, and it's a smaller bunch than in some years, but really they went above and beyond to make sure that the business community's priorities passed this year, and really would appreciate if you commend them next time you see them. And then looking forward, in the coming days, we will be releasing our most valuable legislator. So stay tuned with that. We'll certainly want to engage the local chamber in the area of where that legislator hails from, and really excited to announce that information. That he or she did some amazing work this session, and it was an easy decision for our board to make that decision. And then we'll also be releasing in the coming days how they voted. And so how they voted includes our legislative report card. It includes a list of our distinguished advocates and the reason why they received the distinguished advocate, and then also what passed, what didn't, and what is unfinished business for the business community. And so we ask that you forward this information on to your members. Take a look at it. If you have any questions, again, happy to answer them. And then I talked about unfinished business. As soon as the 2024 legislative session ended, my team compiled a list of unfinished business and immediately started preparing for the 2025 legislative session. And session begins in March in 2025. In 2026, it'll be a January start, but next year's session is March 4th through May 2nd, and advocacy is really a year-round effort. So again, my team is already beginning its work, having conversations with legislators, having conversations with our members about what might need to be included. And a key component of the legislative agenda building process for 2025 will be the Florida Business Agenda Survey. So for those of you who have been with your local chamber for a while, you know that we will be sending you a copy of the survey that you can use for your members. And for your planning purposes, want you to know that we'll likely release this survey sometime in July timeframe. And it's really important that we hear from businesses across the state and as many businesses as possible, because this information is fed into our legislative agenda, and it'll help us determine what to prioritize during the 2025 legislative session. And so that's the updates from the government affairs team today, and I will now turn it back over to Mark.
All right, CJ, thanks a ton for that, and I'm going to, I'll wrap us up here. I've got 5 or 6 more things I wanted to cover, but I want to echo what Carolyn just said. Carolyn, as you know, runs our entire legislative operation, all 30-some lobbyists that we have report into her, and the whole entire agenda for 2025 starts with all of you. So when the survey goes out, I know many of you put your name on it and send it out to your members so you know what's important to your members, and then you share that with us, and that is the frontline input into our 2025 competitiveness agenda. So thanks in advance for all of you who help us build what that agenda looks like. In terms of a couple opportunities that are coming up next month, we'll do this again next month on June 20. I will try to have our Secretary of Commerce dial in. If not that meeting, we'll do it at another one. And remember, he'll be with us a week later in Tampa for our annual workforce summit that we do. Here's a list of our upcoming summits. And for the next one on June 26th in Tampa, some of you asked in the Q&A feature today if this would be available virtually, and of course it is. We put the instructions for that it wasn't in the chat or the Q&A feature, in the chat feature, in the Q&A feature, and then Andrew will also include that both in-person and virtual registration in the follow-up. And remember, we do these summits every year. We do 10 or 11 a year, and we do them essentially every year. So if your chamber is doing something unique and scalable that we can replicate in other markets, please let us know. We would love to feature you not only on these monthly calls, but perhaps put you on the main stage in the 2025 summit, where we can highlight how you're leading your local workforce efforts on behalf of the business community. So be thinking about that. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to highlight what chambers are doing. Speaking of what chambers are doing, you know, as one of our board members, Will Weatherford, the former speaker, is fond of saying, we're never going to get the policy right if we don't get the politics right. And that means getting people to run for office at all levels, from librarian to governor, who've, you know, signed the front of a paycheck before. And so we all play a big role in that. Over 6,200 electable positions in the next couple of years in Florida. And here's what it looks like county by county. Again, 2,600 and change elections just this year. Hopefully, if you're in, you know, if you look up your county, hopefully your chamber knows what are all of the elections in your county, and hopefully in your newsletter, in your speeches, hopefully you're getting the news out far and wide that we need good people to come forward who understand that growing the private sector is a good thing, to put their name forward. So big opportunities in every single county in Florida. Appreciate your help getting that out there. For those of you who want to be part of the FIPL, the Local Candidate Campaign School, we still have a number of them left. One's coming up in South Florida in just a couple of weeks. So just contact me or Andrew, and we'll be happy to engage you there. Wanted to give you a sense. Look how many of you are engaged in helping with the local candidate schools. Again, you don't have to have a PAC. You don't have to make political contributions. We try to cover all the costs, and we just ask that you get the word out that if people want to run for office, here's where they can go to learn more. So I want to thank everybody for participating there. And then finally, I know we've covered a ton of ground today, but a couple of ways that your team can engage. That summit we have in June, I talked about that in Tampa. Also, Rachel, who runs our Future of Work initiative, she's actually in Jacksonville today doing some work there. But over the last couple of months, we shared with you, in fact, we had Rachel on a prior call, that CareerSource, as CareerSource moves from 24 regions to 21 per the REACH Act, we will be unveiling in just a couple of weeks the top 30 in-demand careers in each of the 21 regions going all the way out to 2030. And also, Rachel is including in that work the pathways. So some require GED, some are maybe 18 months and CTEs, some are 2 years, some are 4 year, and also what the pay looks like. And the giant opportunity that local chambers have is to be that megaphone locally to share with middle schoolers, high schoolers, parents, grandparents, guidance counselors, teachers, local media, what the really cool in-demand career opportunities are in each region. And then your chamber can be the big champion of those industries, of those jobs, of keeping talent local. And that's what this in-demand career opportunity is going to be all about, that our Future of Work initiative is launching. And then, of course, I've already talked about FIPL. So I think we had some questions come in. I think we've taken them as we've gone. By all means, I'm always available. Our team's available. I want to thank Andrew. Thanks for putting this together this month. Thank you, Christina, for joining us, and CJ, thanks for covering the legislative front. Sheridan, I know it takes a lot of prep to put this together, and I know you're jumping into a regional meeting in Broward here in a few minutes, but thanks everybody for dialing in today. We'll be in touch real soon, and thanks so much for your support. Let us know what we can do to better support you, and until then, God bless and talk soon. Take care.